Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To the Commissioner, I'm going to start off by saying it's a little bit like a spelling bee. Questions are going to get a little bit harder. So you've done very well thus far, so I'm sure you're confident that you'll do well the rest of the way. But would you agree with me that approximately 85% of the people in the city of Worcester commute or transport by vehicles? That's through the chairperson to the Commissioner.
Through the chair, I would believe that number is probably higher than that.
So maybe 90%.
Probably, yeah.
All right. So one of my concerns, and I don't think it's a secret to you, Commissioner Raleigh, so one of my concerns is I look at the objectives, I look at the strategy, I look at the budget, and that 90% of the people that are most impacted, I would say, by transportation and mobility, they don't seem to be highlighted. They seem to be kind of on the low end of the list. The mission statement doesn't mention anything about traffic efficiency. Let me just say, and I think, Commissioner Raleigh, without divulging where you live and where I live, I think you're familiar with what I'm about to say. It can take close to an hour to get from Newton Square to Tadnick Square, starting at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. Okay? I'm sure there's other parts of the city, same thing is happening. Those are 85 to 90% of the people that live in the city. We've grown by more than any other city in the last decade. The projections are we will continue to grow by large numbers over the next decade. With that growth comes cars, maybe a few bicycles, but mostly cars. And one of the things I'm concerned about is I see the emphasis on bicycles, on other things. I don't see the emphasis on how do we get lots of people who are using cars, 85, 90% people that live in the city, from point A to point B, safely, of course, for themselves, for pedestrians, for everybody around them, but efficiently. I don't even see that in your mission statement, and then I don't see it in your objections and your strategies. And that's what worries me, because we've been around and around, you and I particularly, on this issue, and I can't say that I feel confident that that's a priority. So, I mean, that you're going to say it is, and that's fine. But I'm looking at Burncoat and Millbrook Street, dangerous intersection. Main and Mill, Park and May, Southbridge and Hammond, Chandler and Piedmont, Mill and Chandler, Park Ave in Highland. I could go on and on at different sections of the city where there are real dangerous intersections, and I see the priority given to bicycle lanes and other things. I don't see the priority given to those dangerous intersections. So my concern, and I'll wait for an answer because it's about you and I having a dialogue, not just me having a monologue, but my concern is where in the budget, where in the mission statement, where in the goals or objectives, is there anything about how to get somebody like myself or anybody else in the city from point A to point B in an efficient time and safely?
Commissioner?
Through the chair. So there are, I want to be clear, there are a number of projects included and objectives associated with helping to move vehicles. So
could you point it out?
Yeah, I had mentioned at the beginning that our capital program has $1 million earmarked toward traffic signal upgrades. That's one of the most important things you can do in terms of trying to improve traffic efficiency and the ability to move traffic efficiently through the city. That's where we see most of our congestion is at intersections. So improving the quality and the efficiency of those intersections is critical. A number of the intersections that you just mentioned are actually on that list. So there are projects on Park Avenue, in Webster Square, on Main Street, that will be looking at upgrading the traffic signals to better accommodate, more efficiently accommodate traffic with less congestion and fewer delays. The second part of that, my response, I think, is that we are a growing city. And as the city grows, there is candidly a finite amount of roadway capacity. And we are going to have to start moving ourselves in smarter ways than only by automobiles. That doesn't mean that the majority of people aren't still going to be using their cars, but we have to start growing some of the other modes in order to be able to accommodate that growth. It's just not possible to only accommodate that growth through vehicles. We haven't been doing a great job historically in terms of supporting some of these other modes. So in my opinion, we have a lot of catching up to do there. And that's why you see the emphasis in a lot of the things we talk about is we are trying to catch up in those arenas. But that in no way suggests that we are not working on the issues associated with congestion delays that you see, throughout the city at the peak periods.
So I appreciate your answer. So through the chairman to Commissioner Raleigh again, it's good to hear that some of these dangerous intersections are being addressed. I can say as a lifelong resident, these dangerous intersections have been around a long time, some of which predate your role in your position, but I will say that they should finally be addressed. But when you say we have to look at alternatives or thinking out of the box, I agree. But I'm just going to make a statement and then ask a question. One of the ways other cities, and I know often your department talks about Cambridge, Somerville, so on and so forth, particularly we're talking about bike lanes, they have a robust public transportation system. Comparing Worcester to Cambridge, Somerville, Boston is something I hear all the time, which I totally disagree with when it comes to that issue, because we don't have a robust public transportation. We have a public transportation system, which I've been very critical of in the past, because I don't think it takes people to where they need to go on time and with a frequency that really matters. So what we have is we have cars and bicycles and walking. Half the year, more or less, we have difficult weather, which eliminates a lot of the walking and a lot of the bicycling, especially for greater distances. So to me, what is the plan? There's a zero vision plan. What is the plan to accommodate vehicles over the next decade, knowing that there's going to be a lot more of them in the city of Worcester, knowing that public transportation doesn't work? And I think you'd agree with me, the number of people bicycling as a mode of transportation, even if it doubled, wouldn't be more than 10%.
Commissioner?
Through the chair. So I agree absolutely that we have a transit system that has a lot of room for improvement. And I think the WRTA is starting to make some good strides there. And that's going to be important for us to see growth and improvement in that system as we continue to grow, because you simply cannot only try to accommodate mobility through personal automobiles in a city. It just doesn't work. So it needs to play a bigger role than it does. But I absolutely agree. It plays it serves a limited market today and doesn't accommodate the number of users that I think we're going to need to in the future. In terms of vehicular traffic, which is the majority of what we're dealing with, absolutely agree with that. We need to address those choke points. That's what drives congestion you see all throughout the city. So there are locations that have limited capacity that is largely driven by antiquated traffic control systems, so traffic signals. That's something we can do something about, and that's why we are looking to put $1 million into improving our traffic signal systems. And then there are just simply constraints in the roadway system. We have less ability to do things about that because we are a built-out city. So it's really about focusing on those intersections that are causing a lot of the congestion. You use the example of the Highland Street corridor. Most of the congestion that we're seeing occur along that corridor is happening in 2 or 3 locations. It's not a capacity constraint all along the corridor. It's at those key intersections. So focusing on getting the traffic signals to operate as efficiently as possible at those intersections, I think, is a key thing that we need to do.
Now, thank you. I may have missed it, but is there anything in the Vision Zero plan that talks about addressing the choke points?
Commissioner?
So through the chair, I want to just distinguish, there are 2 different plans that our department has developed. The Vision Zero plan is focused specifically on safety. So no, it does not look at addressing congestion. It's not the purpose of that plan. The Mobility Action Plan does talk about the need to improve the efficiency of the system and the traffic signal operations in particular as a strategy, is called out as a strategy. We definitely have some work to do there in terms of developing a long-term plan, and that's something our department started doing. Is instead of just looking at this on a year-to-year basis, we're trying to develop a 5 or even longer time frame plan so that we can start planning these larger capital improvements out over the long term.
No, I appreciate the answer, but I got to be honest. Every time I hear of a new major traffic redesign, whether it's Newton Square, whether it's Worcester State University, it's never about choke points. Just, I've never heard that language used. Maybe I've missed it. But I'm glad you've mentioned the integrated traffic systems, because one of the things the mayor has mentioned, I've mentioned, my colleagues have mentioned, is taking a look at synchronized lights. And, if we have integrated traffic systems, and you go to a city like New York City, and you start at one end of the street, and you either got all reds or all greens, but you're saving on gas, you're saving on pollution, and you kind of know where you're going and how long it's going to take, because it's synchronized. When we're looking and talking about integrated traffic systems, why haven't we done a pilot, one street in each district, to see how that would work? Through the chair.
So,
Commissioner.
through the chair. So some good news and some bad news in response to this question as well.
For who?
I'll start.
For me or you?
Yeah, to both of us.
Okay.
I'll start with the bad news. What you're referring to in terms of synchronizing the traffic signals in a very specific way works really well when you have a grid system. It doesn't work as well when you have a more haphazard arrangement, such as Worcester has. But there is something called coordinated traffic signal systems, which is a variation on that. It's not necessarily a hard timing progression that guarantees you're going to get the green when you get to the next light. But what it does is the traffic signal timing is considering what's happening at the other intersections that it's linked to. And so it gives you some advantage. So you're more likely to get several successive greens in a row. And this past year, we actually did reintroduce coordinated timing along the Upper Lincoln Street corridor. It was designed for that. Hasn't operated that way in at least 15 years. I'm not certain why that's the case, but we went into that corridor. We updated some of the equipment that needed to be updated to do that, and then retimed the signals to operate in coordination. So that is a place where we've done exactly what you're suggesting. We'd like to do more of that where it's conducive. You need to have fairly closely spaced signals. So Major Taylor's another corridor that would make sense to do that. Shrewsbury Street. But I just want to be clear that there are some limitations to the applicability of that just because of the nature of our street system isn't a rigid grid.
I want to switch to something else while I still have a few minutes left, and that is something that Councilor Rosen has brought up. It seems to me, having been part of the conversation and on the council, when Mill Street was redone and attended the meeting at Doherty High School, that one of the things that doesn't happen, through the chair, major reconstruction projects, is when there's businesses located near the projects, nobody from a city department goes in, knocks on the door, tells a business owner what's going to happen, and asks for their feedback on how it's going to impact them. Myself, I went up and down Mill Street after the project was done, and the feedback I got back was nobody ever asked them anything. Through the chair, Mr. Raleigh, I believe yourself acknowledged at the Doherty High meeting that nobody went around at Newton Square and talked to the hairdresser and the pizza shop that's over there. How are these projects going to affect them? And we're trying to grow the city not only population-wise, which is happening organically, but also business-wise. And it seems to me that we're not doing a service to the small business owner when we totally ignore the impact that these major road projects are going to have. So through the chair to the commissioner, why don't we do that?
Commissioner.
Through the chair, I absolutely agree. We should be talking with everyone who's affected by these projects to the extent we can. So businesses, residents, schools, organizations, the whole 9 yards. So we'll certainly be talking with the businesses on the Newton Square project, and it's going to be important as we have these other major projects coming up as well. And I'm thinking in particular the Chandler Street tip project, not the one at May Street, but the other one. There's a whole host of businesses who will be significantly affected by that, particularly during the construction period. So Absolutely agree. We need to engage with those stakeholders.
Now, there's more of an opportunity, hopefully there'll be an opportunity at another point to talk more about the Channel Street project. But just a couple quick questions and I'll finish. One is that it seems to me that there's never been a meeting focused on that project. I've been on the council as long as you say the plan has existed. There was conversation at a meeting at West Atlantic School about some of the changes on Pleasant Street, and there was Upper Pleasant, and there was reference to future possible changes down by Worcester State University. But there's never been a specific meeting that I can recall about two rotaries or roundabouts, whatever you want to call them, that are going to be, that are being proposed. So am I correct? And if I am correct, why hasn't there been before the project was designed?
Commissioner?
Through the chair. So that goes through the normal tip process that's prescribed by Mass DOT. There was a 25% design hearing that predated my department's formation. I did attend that hearing. At the 25% design stage, that's essentially the point where you're making the decision that this is the improvement that's going to be constructed. There are obviously some modifications that happen in the design process after that, but the alternative that was presented at the 25% design hearing was the two roundabouts proposed at Main Street.
So if I may, Mr. Chairman, I'm getting a little wiser as I'm getting a little older on the council. I went back and looked at the notification. You're right, it does predate you for that hearing, the 25% plan, and it does not mention rotaries or roundabouts. So anybody that would have went online to try to decide whether or not this meeting mattered to them, and if the rotaries weren't something they were concerned about, it wouldn't have gone, because it didn't say anything about it. So that's my recollection. I believe it's been amended since then, and now has more clear language about what this plan is all about. But I've been through enough of these now, where when the state and the city are involved, you got the 25% plan, so on and so forth. It seems to me we miss the opportunity to engage people before the plan gets to the 25% mark. Call me a cynic, but I believe once the 25% mark is hit, the plan's never going to get thrown away. It may get amended, tweaked, but sometimes people don't want the plan. You know, I could tell you about Lincoln Square and other places, which I'm sure you're familiar with, historically have been changed and rechanged, almost to the point where they've gone back to where they started, because people realize maybe those changes weren't the best idea. So not every change is a good change. Even if we don't have to pay for it, it doesn't mean it's a good change. So through the chair, this is my last or next to last question. Why don't we have a system in place where if the state's involved, irrespective of their 25% scheduled meeting online, where they notify people, that we notify people so that we can engage our residents before we even decide the plan is worth pursuing?
Commissioner?
So through the chair, I think we're trying to do that, and I think we've made significant improvements in terms of our communications, working with the communications team, trying to post information on the website and reach people in as many different ways as we can. I think we've done a pretty good job of communicating what we're working on over the last couple of years, the projects that we're working on, and some of that's a result of feedback we've received from you and others as well, that we need to improve that arena, and we've made strides in doing that, and I think it's an important point of emphasis.
Well, let me thank you. Let me just end by saying more of a comment. You feel free to answer, but I'm not asking you this as a question. But the reason why that's so important to me is I would expect that if the Temple Emmanuel, formerly Worcester State University project does happen, and there's two roundabouts, rotaries put there, my guess is it'll take months to finish that project. And that also tells me that all the cars parked along the side of Worcester State University and elsewhere will have to go somewhere else, because that's where the construction is going to take place, which means we, as at-large councilors and Councilor Rivera, particularly in his district, will get call after call about people going to Worcester State University that are now parked in front of people's driveways, in front of people's homes, maybe even in their driveways. It will be a major, major problem. And for me to accept that that neighborhood was not engaged before we got to the 25% mark is just a difficult thing for me to accept. Again, Commissioner Raleigh, some of this predates you, so I don't want you to think this is about you. It's about the process. The process to me is not focused on the resident, the business owner, and the driver of the vehicle as much as it should be. It's focused elsewhere. And hopefully in the next year, and I'm happy to continue to have these conversations, we can have a more equitable focus on everybody, not just certain groups that aren't the major users of the roads. So thank you for your time and your responses. I appreciate it.